You've been trained to believe that kindness is a virtue, that giving without asking is noble, that selflessness is the mark of a good person, and because of this conditioning, you've become prey. Right now, as you read this, there are people in your life extracting value from you, while offering nothing in return. They're not doing it because they're evil. They're doing it because you've taught them that you're available for exploitation. And the most terrifying part, you don't even realize you're the one who gave them permission. Let me show you something that will make you deeply uncomfortable. Every relationship you have operates on an invisible economy. Not money, though that's part of it. I'm talking about attention, energy, time, emotional labor, opportunities, and respect. In healthy exchanges, this economy is balanced. Both parties invest. Both parties receive. But in your life, there are relationships where you're the central bank, constantly printing currency, while receiving counterfeit bills in return. And you accept this arrangement because you've been sold a lie about what it means to be a good person. The truth is, people don't use you because they're bad. They use you because you've made it profitable to do so. This is not a moral judgment. This is behavioral economics applied to human relationships. When an action yields reward without consequence, that action gets repeated. You answer every call. You drop everything when they need something. You give advice, connections, money, time. And what do you get back? Breadcrumbs. Just enough to keep you invested, but never enough to balance the scales. This is not an accident. This is a system. And you built it. Now, before you close this, and tell yourself it doesn't apply to you, consider this. The people who need to hear this message most are the ones most likely to deny it. Because acknowledging that you're being used requires acknowledging that you've allowed it. And that's a wound to the ego most people aren't willing to sustain. But if you're still here, you're different. You sense something is wrong. You feel drained. You've noticed that certain people only appear when they need something. You've felt the sting of being forgotten the moment you're no longer useful. Good. That discomfort is the first crack in the prison you've built for yourself. Let's go deeper. Machiavelli understood something about human nature that most people spend their entire lives denying. He observed that people respect power, not goodness. They align themselves with those who can benefit them, not those who are morally superior. You can be the kindest person in the room and still be invisible. You can be generous to a fault and still be forgotten. Because kindness without boundaries is not virtue, it's weakness. And weakness, in the social ecosystem, is an invitation for exploitation. The Stoics had a different angle on this. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of knowing your worth and not diminishing yourself for the comfort of others. He didn't mean you should be cruel. He meant you should recognize that self-betrayal in the name of pleasing others is a form of self-destruction. When you abandon your needs to accommodate everyone else's, you're not being noble. You're being a coward. You're avoiding the conflict that comes with setting boundaries because you're terrified of being disliked. And that terror is what they feed on. Here's where it gets dark. The people using you aren't sitting in a room, plotting your downfall. They don't wake up thinking about how to extract maximum value from you. It's far more insidious than that. They've simply learned that you're a resource that doesn't run out. You've trained them through your behavior. Every time you said yes when you meant no, you reinforced the pattern. Every time you prioritized their emergency over your own life, you taught them that your time has no value. Every time you forgave, without requiring change, you communicated that there are no consequences for mistreating you. You're not a victim of their manipulation. You're a participant in your own exploitation. But there's a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. The reason you allow this isn't just about being nice. It's about something much darker. You derive your sense of worth from being needed. Being used feels like being valued because you've never developed an internal sense of self-worth. You measure your importance by how much you can give, how indispensable you can make yourself, how much you can endure. This is not love. This is codependency, and codependency is the most socially acceptable form of self-harm. Think about the person who only calls when they need something, the friend who disappears for months and resurfaces with a crisis, the family member who treats you like an ATM, the colleague who takes credit for your ideas, the romantic partner who keeps you in limbo, never fully committing but never letting you go. What do all these people have in common? They've identified that you'll tolerate it. They've run the numbers. They know you won't walk away. And why would they change a system that benefits them at no cost? Now here's the part that will disturb you most. You're angry at them. But your anger is misdirected. They're just doing what humans do, optimizing for self-interest with minimal effort. The real anger should be directed inward, at yourself, for allowing it, for knowing better and doing nothing, for feeling the resentment build and still answering the phone, for recognizing the pattern and still making excuses for them. You're not trapped by their behavior. You're trapped by your inability to act on what you already know. So what's the solution? What's the thing you need to do that will stop people from using you? The answer is simpler than you think, but the execution will feel impossible because it requires you to do something you've avoided your entire life. You must become comfortable with being disliked. You must be willing to let relationships end. You must learn to say no without explanation, without apology, without softening the blow. Because the moment you start protecting your energy, the users will reveal themselves. They'll call you selfish. They'll say you've changed. They'll weaponize your past generosity against you, asking what happened to the person you used to be. And this is the test. This is where most people break and return to the old pattern. But if you hold firm, something miraculous happens. The ones who truly value you will adjust. The ones who were only using you will disappear. And you'll finally see who was real and who was just feeding. There's a concept in game theory called the iterated prisoner's dilemma. It shows that in repeated interactions, the most successful strategy is not unconditional cooperation or permanent defection. It's reciprocal altruism. You start with cooperation, but the moment the other party defects, you defect in return. Only when they return to cooperation do you cooperate again. This is not cruelty. This is intelligence. It's teaching people that there are consequences for taking advantage of you. It's establishing that your kindness is not infinite and your boundaries are not negotiable. But here's what nobody tells you about setting boundaries. It feels like death at first, because you've built your identity around being available, being helpful, being the person people can count on. When you start saying no, it feels like you're killing a part of yourself. And in a way, you are. You're killing the version of you that was willing to be small so others could feel big. You're killing the people pleaser who would rather suffer in silence than cause discomfort. You're killing the belief that your worth is determined by how much you give. And that death is necessary, because on the other side of it is the version of you that people respect instead of exploit. Let me tell you about a psychological phenomenon called the Ben Franklin effect. Franklin observed that if you get someone to do a favor for you, they're more likely to like you than if you do a favor for them. Why? Because people justify their actions. If they've invested in you, they rationalize that investment by deciding you must be worth it. But if they've only received from you, there's no psychological investment. You're just a service provider, disposable, replaceable. This is why constantly giving makes people value you less, not more. You've made it too easy. There's no investment on their part, so there's no perceived value. Now think about the relationships where you feel most respected. I guarantee you, those are the relationships where there's balance, where you've shown that your time and energy are finite resources, where you've demonstrated that access to you is a privilege, not a right. This doesn't mean you're cold or calculating. It means you understand your worth, and you require others to understand it too. The people who truly care about you will meet that standard. The people who were using you will fail it, and that failure is not your problem to fix. But there's still one layer deeper we need to go. Why do you keep attracting these people in the first place? It's not random. Users have a sixth sense for people with weak boundaries. They can spot a pleaser from across a room. It's in the way you apologize unnecessarily, the way you over-explain your decisions, the way you seek approval in your tone, the way you make yourself smaller to avoid taking up space. These are signals, and the people who exploit others are fluent in reading them. So the real work isn't just about setting boundaries with the people already in your life. It's about changing the signals you're broadcasting so you stop attracting users in the first place. This requires a fundamental shift in how you see yourself. You need to move from external validation to internal validation. Stop measuring your worth by how others treat you and start measuring it by how you treat yourself. Do you keep your commitments to yourself? Do you honor your own needs? Do you speak to yourself with respect? Because if you don't, why should anyone else, people, mirror the relationship you have with yourself? If you treat yourself as disposable, they will too. If you treat yourself as valuable, they'll either rise to meet that standard or remove themselves from your life. Either outcome is a win. Here's the brutal truth that will set you free. Some people are only meant to be in your life for a season, not a lifetime. And when their season ends, trying to force the relationship to continue is what creates the dynamic where they use you. Because the authentic connection is gone, but you're still trying to maintain it through acts of service. You've become the person desperately trying to keep someone around by making yourself useful. And that desperation is repulsive. It pushes away the genuine connection you're seeking while attracting more users who sense your fear of abandonment. The antidote to being used is not to become cold or withholding. It's to become selective. It's to understand that your energy is your most valuable resource, and you have the right, the obligation even, to invest it wisely. Would you give your money to anyone who asked for it? Would you let strangers drain your bank account? Then why do you let people drain your emotional and mental reserves without question? The same principles apply. Your attention is currency. Your time is currency. Your emotional labor is currency. And you need to start treating it as such. Think about this. When someone truly values you, they demonstrate it through their behavior. They reciprocate. They show up. They consider your needs without being asked. They protect the relationship because they recognize its value. When someone is using you, the relationship only exists when they need something. You're not a person to them. You're a function. And the moment you stop performing that function, you'll see how quickly they vanish. This is the litmus test. Pull back your availability and see who stays. The ones who remain are your people. The ones who disappear were never yours to begin with. We're approaching the final piece of this puzzle, the one that ties everything together. The reason people will use you until you do this isn't because they're inherently evil. It's because humans are efficiency machines. We take the path of least resistance. If someone can get what they need without effort, they will. It's not personal. It's behavioral mechanics. And the only way to change the mechanics is to change the cost-benefit analysis. When using you becomes more costly than respecting you, the behavior changes. When your absence becomes more painful than your presence with boundaries, people adjust. But you have to be willing to let them fail that test. You have to be willing to walk away from anyone who won't meet your standard. And that's the part that terrifies you, because walking away means accepting that you might be alone for a while. It means trusting that better relationships exist, even when you can't see them yet. It means believing that you're worthy of reciprocal love, even when your past suggests otherwise. This is the leap of faith that separates people who break the cycle from people who stay trapped in it forever. Most people choose the familiar pain of being used over the unknown freedom of solitude. But you're not most people. If you were, you wouldn't have made it this far. So here's what you do starting now. You audit every relationship in your life, not with judgment, but with honesty. Ask yourself, is this balanced? Do I feel energized or drained after interacting with this person? Would they show up for me the way I show up for them? If the answer is no, you have a decision to make. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. You either establish boundaries immediately, or you accept that this is what the relationship will always be. There is no third option. Hoping they'll change without you changing is insanity. When you establish a boundary, you don't need to explain it. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to make it comfortable for them. A boundary is a statement of fact, not a negotiation. I'm not available for that. That doesn't work for me. I can't help you with this. Period. The discomfort you feel when you say these words is years of conditioning screaming at you. That voice is not your intuition. It's your programming. And you need to disobey it. The people who truly love you will understand. They might be surprised because you've never done this before, but they'll respect it. The people who were using you will react with anger, guilt trips, or abandonment. Let them. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to protect yourself from people who see you as a resource rather than a person. And if that means losing relationships you thought were important, so be it. Better to be alone than to be surrounded by people who only want you for what you can give them. Self is the final truth, the one that brings us full circle. You've been trained to believe that kindness is a virtue, that giving without asking is noble, that selflessness is the mark of a good person. And because of this conditioning, you've become prey. But now you know better. Now you understand that people will use you until you make it impossible to do so. Until you value yourself enough to require others to value you too. Until you become comfortable with being disliked by people who never truly liked you in the first place. Until you recognize that your worth is not determined by how much you give, but by how well you protect what's yours to protect. And once you do this, everything changes. The users disappear. The real ones remain. And for the first time in your life, you'll understand what it means to be truly seen rather than simply used.